y'all. So y'all know me, I'm Joshua Nottingham, and this is my second presentation on my second video game choice, which is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I apologize about the lighting in this room. I did it in my living room last time, which has overhead lights. My bedroom does not. But anyways, we'll continue with that. And so, excuse me, sorry. Alright, so, in this presentation, I will give you a overview of the game, and then we'll go into the developer's history. We will then talk about how the history of the game development. Then we'll talk about the narrative of the game, the aesthetic qualities, and the cultural impact overall. Alright, so, essentially, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a game where you do the following. You explore ancient Greece. You meet historical characters. You slay mythical beasts. You learn about the origins of the Assassin's Order. All kinds of cool things. And that's just a few things. You will even, make choices that alter the story. You will fight the Minotaur. All kinds of awesome things. Alright, so, the developer history. Ubisoft is the developer for this game. Essentially, Ubisoft started in 1984 as a distributor company. They actually started out distributing farm equipment. Then they started to realize it wasn't as lucrative, so they went into computers. And with the computers, they sold software. One of the brothers, as I said, it was started by 5 brothers, if I didn't already mention that. One of the brothers discovered there was a significant difference in software price point between the UK and France, where they started. So they started exploiting that difference and buying from the UK and selling it in France at a much lower rate. So they ended up becoming successful distributors. Ultimately, they started as a mail-in order distributor, but they later on went into retail. And then in 1986, they transitioned to video game development, actually using kids' ideas that would come in. They come in with ideas for video games, and they say, okay, we're going to try that. They started game development through an ingenious marketing strategy. They basically said they invited these guys to come to a beautiful chateau and wine country in France and relax and also develop games. They did it as a relaxing setting, and they were able to get 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds to come down and help them develop a really cool game. Fast forward to 2005, and they found Ubisoft Quebec. Ubisoft actually has tons of subsidiaries all over the world. They help in game development, game production, all kinds of things. So they established Ubisoft Quebec in 2005 as just another development studio for people for assets they had in Quebec. Normally Montreal is responsible for the Assassin's Creed games. But as of one of the more recent ones in 2015, Syndicate, Quebec took the lead. Syndicate was okay, but they really shined when they took the lead in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The game's development began in 2015. Ultimately, 10 studios, all subsidiaries of Ubisoft, were involved in the production of this game. Interestingly, there was no crunch in the period of this game. Red Dead Redemption, which came out the same year, almost the exact same time frame, they made headlines because they had way too much crunch. But according to an interview with one of the head developers, there was no crunch time. He said people did work overtime, but they made sure that they took hours off in the next available shift. So, it was interesting. It was released in 2018, after 3 years of development. A rather awesome game. So, overall, the narrative of the game is an enchanting tale. Essentially, you are a disgraced Spartan who is now a mercenary for hire. And you travel across the Greek world taking jobs, hunting treasure, slaying Athenians or Spartans, and ultimately reuniting your family through several plot twists. It's actually quite interesting. The setting, as said, is the game takes place in ancient Greece. The time period is the Peloponnesian War. It doesn't also just take place in the continent of Greece. Well, the continental country of Greece, but also the islands surrounding it. These include places like Euboea, and then Macedonia, all kinds. And each island is distinct with their own gods and city-states, and it's really interesting. For those of you who don't know, the Peloponnesian War was the time between when the Greeks and Spartans were fighting. This is the time of Socrates, Pythagoras. Well, actually, Pythagoras is a little before, but he is in the game. They explain it through a weird plot twist. Anyways, this was the time of Socrates and Herodotus, father of history. Anyway, so the main characters end up being Alexios or Cassandra. They are siblings, and depending on who you picked at the beginning, it changes the game slightly in who you play as. So, ultimately they are fully fleshed out characters with limited customization. You can change armor and stuff and choices, but nothing else. It's not like Fable where it's really an avatar. The antagonist is ultimately dependent on the protagonist. If you choose Alexios, Cassandra is the protagonist. If you choose Cassandra, Alexios is the protagonist. Antagonist. Sorry about that. Interestingly, the game seems best written with Alexios as the protagonist and Cassandra as the antagonist. A lot of fans picked up on that, and they ultimately agreed that's really how it was written. Just for reviewing, these are the pictures. You've got Alexios, the brother, and Cassandra, the sister. And just a little, thought I'd help you along there. There are many supporting characters throughout this game. Many are historical characters, which is usually the tradition of Assassin's Creed. These people include Socrates, Pythagoras, and Hippocrates. You know who all these guys are. Interestingly, though, Pythagoras is 200 years old. They actually have a neat little plot device that involves an Atlantean artifact that kept him alive for 200 years. So it's kind of cool because you get to see another Greek guy who should be it. Herodotus is also a supporting character who goes on. But there are really two main supporting characters. These characters are Barnabas, or Barnabas, as they call him in the game, and Icarus, your eagle. Barnabas is a sea captain who you save from trouble, and he becomes sort of your first mate, sort of the captain, and you take his ship, the Adrestia, and you explore the Greek world with it. He provides a lot of information for people not familiar with Greek myths or Greek history, and he provides kind of a viewpoint of what the layman Greek thought at this time about the war and things like that. It's really interesting, and he forges a friendship, and you get a really neat kind of sense of the world through Barnabas' eyes. Icarus is an eagle. He helps you in combat. You can actually play as him flying over, so you could argue he's a playable character. It's kind of weird, but it's interesting. He helps you identify animals to kill, things to pillage, all that stuff. So those two end up really being the main characters, as Icarus is a support system through the whole game, and Barnabas is more or less your sidekick. It's pretty interesting. Now, to finish up actors, there are also tons of other actors in the game. There are civilians, there are people who are going to give quests, which you can ultimately either, depending on the quest, you might kill them, or rob them, or not rob them, or negotiate with them. Then there's mercenaries who hunt you if you commit crimes. You get a bounty up and the mercenary will hunt you, but you can also compete with those mercenaries and kill them and become the top mercenary, which I'm working on. It's kind of cool. There's also the cultists, so you got the cult of Cosmos, the cult of Ares, and they're just really creepy bad guys. And you get to blow them up, and they work really well as just kind of cannon fodder to enjoy fighting. And then there's the mythical beasts, like the one I have pictured here, the Minotaur. They're really fun. They're usually produced by an Atlantean artifact, so it gives kind of a cool historical sci-fi basis for the myths. And you get some really fun ones to fight, Medusa, and all of the really cool ones. So, those are basically the actors. Now, aesthetics. According to Understanding Video Games, there are many aesthetics that make up 3 categories. These 3 categories are rules, geography representation, and number of players. The rules. So, according to the book, you can break the rules up into 2 sections. Interplay rules, which are basically what you can interact with, and evaluation rules, which is how they interact. Alright, so as I was saying, interplay rules are about how objects interact and what objects can interact. They are interesting in this game, because essentially, they fall into categories. I kind of did the categories myself just from observing, and from what I saw, you have elements, such as water, fire, um, rock, stone, that kind of thing. Buildings or structures, people, glowing objects, and animals. So essentially, the interplay rules state that these are the things that can be interacted with, and nothing really else in the game can be interacted with except things that fall into these categories. Now, evaluation rules are how they interact. Now, the evaluation rules for this game are actually really varied in the category. It depends on what category they're in, and then it depends on what they exactly are, what substance they are. But to keep it simple, essentially they can be summarized that these actions take place depending on the category. In the action of elements, they react if dealt with for too long. For instance, you stand in fire too long, you catch on fire. You stay underwater too long, you drown. That's basically how elements interact. People will attack if hurt, or they will attack if insulted, or they will be friendly. That's basically how people interact. Glowing objects could be anything. If it's a glowing object and you pick it up and it's armor, you can equip it. If it's a glowing object and it's money, you can spend it. It really depends on the nature of the glowing object. Any structure in the game can be climbed. That's basically how structures interact. As you can see here, he's on a giant statue of Poseidon. But you can literally interact with anything. Cliffs, trees, any statue. Animals, they can be killed or tamed. Or in the case of your horse, ridden. So you get this idea of you can either hunt the animals, or if they're certain wild animals, you can tame them and be friends with them, or you can ride them. So that's basically how the rules in this game work. Now, geography and representation. Essentially, this is an open world game from a third-person perspective. It uses a photorealistic art design, which is beautiful. This is especially shown when you get to the historical characters. Socrates looks just like the statue of Socrates, if you've ever seen it. He doesn't look any different. And it's so cool, because this photorealistic thing makes you feel like you actually are enjoying an adventure back in time, and that you see how these people worked and did, and it's really fun. The sound design is also really cool. Music is used very consistently in this game to reflect actions and your locale. The music for this game is a constant reminder that you are in ancient Greece and you are a warrior. When you're exploring, it will be light with a cultural kind of pan flute. When you're in combat, it'll be a heavy horn and war drums as you fight in naval battles or with swords. It's just really, really well done. In the tomb, it might be a little ominous and low. You might not even notice the music in the tomb because it's almost not there. It's really, really well done. The sound effects are also really well done. They reflect the real world and character actions. As Alexios climbs, he grunts. If he gets hit, he screams. Men scream when they're on fire. Swords clash. It's just, arrows swish, and it's just really cool. If you throw a bomb in the fire, it explodes. Smoke bombs go off in smoke. It's really, really well done. The background sound is also expressive, in that the ocean sounds like the ocean. You hear the seagulls chirp, you hear the waves wash. Cities sound like cities. You hear people murmur, carts move, horses clip-clop as you walk by. It's really, really well done. And it makes you feel like you are in a living, breathing Greece. It's really well done. Anyways, number of players, this is really just a single-player game. However, there is an online component, in that any player can design their own quests and share them online. This does two things. One, it makes the game endless fun because there's always something new to explore and enjoy. And two, it allows you to share with your friends and family and community about what you've created. It could even be used as a recruiting tool for Ubisoft. If someone was really, really good with the minor little game creation tool, they might, try to ask them what their degree is and stuff like that. I don't know about that, but it is the only online component, truly. Finally, the cultural impact. The game has done two things. It has not only revitalized the Assassin's Creed franchise, which some people were saying was getting a little stale. It has done this by incorporating the myths in with the historical characters, and it makes it more fun. It gave it an RPG element, which the Assassin's Creed never really had. If it did, it was only limitedly. So it's really changed the franchise into an RPG kind of fantasy historical mix. It did it really well. The other thing that's changed is they introduced an exploration mode, which is making headlines. Instead of having an icon and you go here, they give you like a clue or a riddle, and you had to solve it looking at the map and then find where you were going. Sometimes you could be wrong. Trust me, I spent hours going the wrong direction because I kept getting east and west mixed up. It's really, really well, and it not only helps you learn how to read a map, but it makes the world feel more real and fun and less like, oh, it's an icon, I gotta go to that icon. Actually, in fact, a new open world game called Ghost of Tsushima is taking a clue from that and doing that. Instead of icons, it will use wind instead of riddles. And it's really interesting, and it's revolutionizing open world games. And Ubisoft has actually already equipped it in a few other games, like Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is also really fun. But anyway, so it's done that, and that's the kind of cultural impact it's had. It's revitalized and introduced a new mechanic for games. Essentially, the game is hugely fun. From naval battles to hunting the Minotaur, there is endless fun to be had. If you like ancient history or just slaying monsters, you can't miss this game. It's a lot of fun, and it's worth the play. Hope you have a good day.